Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror? Not just to fix your collar or check your teeth, but really looked past the surface, past the face others see. Have you ever asked, what story is my body telling about the life I'm living? Because here's the truth that no one says out loud. Your physique is not just about attraction. It's not just about muscle tone or the curve of your shoulders or the line of your jaw. It is your posture of presence. It is the history of your choices. It is the emotional architecture of how you carry pain, pride, regret, and power. And whether you realize it or not, people can read you like a silent book. Your children, your partner, your colleagues, even strangers passing you on the street. We live in a world obsessed with quick fixes and outward validation. But the shape of your body is more intimate than likes or comments. It reveals how much you respect yourself and how much you've abandoned yourself. This isn't about vanity, it's about dignity, because when a man carries himself like he matters, he begins to matter more not just to others, but to himself. And that, my dear listener, changes everything. So let's have a deeper conversation today, not about abs or aesthetics, but about embodiment and what your body is really saying when you walk into a room. There's something quietly haunting about the moment a man begins to feel invisible. It doesn't come with fireworks. It's not dramatic, it's subtle, it creeps in during the silence, when you walk into a room and no one turns their head. When your partner kisses you out of habit, not hunger, when your children don't look up from their phones when once they ran into your arms. You think it's just age or the stress or the bills, but somewhere deep inside you wonder, have I disappeared from my own life? You used to feel in your body, strong, present, maybe even proud, but now something feels dulled, heavy. Your body has become more of a burden than a statement, and in that quiet resignation you've started handing away your power, one unconscious moment at a time. Let me tell you something that might sting a little. It's not just that the world stopped noticing you. It's that you stopped showing up, because your physique, your posture, your vitality, your presence, it doesn't just happen. It's a dialogue. It reflects the intimacy you have with yourself, and when that intimacy fades, so does the signal you send to the world. We don't talk enough about men's bodies, not like this. We talk about them in locker rooms, in numbers, in statistics. We talk about strength in terms of performance, but rarely do we ask, how does your body make you feel in your relationships? In your marriage, in your bedroom, in your mind, your body is not a machine, it's a messenger. And for many men over 30, that message has become blurred by responsibility, softened by routine, and numbed by disconnection. You chase success, but you sacrifice energy. You earn respect, but you lose desire. You provide for others, but forget to nourish yourself. And all the while, your body is still speaking. It's just that nobody's listening, not even you. You see, we often think physique is about appearance. But truly it is about self-regard. A well-kept body says, I am worth the effort. I'm still here, I still matter. And this isn't about being a fitness model. It's about being in alignment. Your shoulders tell a story. Are they collapsed under the weight of unspoken resentment, or do they stretch wide in ownership of who you are? When a man takes care of his body, something magnetic happens. He becomes more emotionally available. He holds eye contact differently. He touches with more confidence. He makes decisions from grounded clarity rather than frantic survival. Because the body is the first place where we betray ourselves. We stay up late, we overeat, we sit too long. We ignore pain, we pretend we're fine, and in doing so, we slowly teach ourselves that we don't matter. Until the intimacy you once had with yourself becomes a stranger's touch you barely recognize, and your wife or your lover or your own soul starts to ask for something deeper. When I speak to couples, I often notice a quiet tension in the men, a longing they don't have words for. They say they want their partner to desire them again, to admire them, to feel lit up by their presence. But underneath that longing is something even more primal. They want to feel worthy of being wanted again. And that starts with the body, not because you have to look a certain way, but because when you invest in your body, you change the way you see yourself. And that's what other people respond to, because attraction is not just about beauty, it's about energy. Vibration, aliveness. The truth is, your physique is your first act of self-respect. It's the space where your intentions meet your actions, where your discipline becomes your freedom, where your limits become your invitation. When you walk into a room with your chest open, your head up, not in arrogance, but in presence, you don't have to say a word. Your body already said, I'm here, I'm awake, I haven't given up. You become more than a provider, you become a man with a pulse again. And it's not about what others see first, it's about what you feel first. Imagine waking up and stretching without pain, putting on a shirt and liking how it fits, bending down to pick something up and feeling steady, taking your partner's hand and knowing, I am in this moment with her. Fully, that kind of embodiment, it changes the way you argue, the way you make love, the way you make decisions. Because you're no longer living from the neck up, you're connected. And when a man is connected to his body, he is harder to manipulate, easier to love, and impossible to ignore. So the question is not, do you have a six-pack? The question is, are you living inside your body or just carrying it around like luggage from the past? Because here's the beautiful part, no matter how far gone you feel, your body is still yours, waiting, forgiving, wanting to come back home, and maybe that homecoming starts today with one small change, one choice, one deeper breath. Sometimes we forget that the body keeps score. It remembers the promises you didn't keep, the times you said, I'll start tomorrow, the weeks that turned into years. It holds the weight not just of your meals, but of your postponements, of your silence. It stores your stress in your neck, your guilt in your gut, and your shame in your shoulders. And yet, even after all that, your body is still here breathing, waiting, forgiving. You can't lie to your body. It knows the truth before your mouth even forms the words. You say you're tired, but the kind of tired you're carrying doesn't come from lack of sleep. It's the fatigue of self-abandonment, and that kind of exhaustion won't go away with a nap or a weekend off. It only lifts when you return to the parts of you that you left behind. So let me ask you gently, when did you stop prioritizing yourself? Not the selfish version of prioritizing. I'm not talking about escaping your responsibilities or indulging in fantasies. I'm talking about the sacred kind, the kind where you say, my body is not an afterthought, it is not a burden. It is my foundation. So many men are starving for intimacy, but they are disconnected from the very vessel that makes intimacy possible. They want to be touched, to be seen, to be felt, but they no longer feel themselves. Their skin is numb from stress. Their breath shallow from tension. They touch their partner not with presence, but with performance. And they wonder why connection feels hollow. But intimacy is not built in the bedroom. It begins in the morning, when you pour water instead of soda, when you stretch instead of scrolling, when you move your body not to punish it, but to honor it. Because the body, when cared for, becomes a signal to others that you're emotionally available, you become safer, more consistent, more desirable, not because of your waistline, but because of your alignment. Your body and your values begin to walk in the same direction. You stop chasing affirmation, you start embodying it, and what does that look like? It looks like waking up and wanting to take care of yourself. Not from pressure, but from partnership with yourself. You begin to trust your own hands again. You become less reactive, more grounded, less angry, more intentional. And people feel that. Your partner softens around it. Your children become curious. Your co-workers pay attention, because men who carry themselves with presence create space. Their physique isn't loud, it's clear. It says, I take care of me so I can take care of us. That's leadership, and leadership begins with embodiment. You may think this sounds spiritual, and you'd be right, because the body is sacred, and when you treat it as such, it starts to reveal truths you couldn't hear when you were drowning in noise. When a man begins to walk more, eat simpler, rest deeper, stretch slower, something changes. His thoughts start matching his movements. His emotions regulate without effort, and what once felt like chaos begins to organize itself. I've worked with men who were on the edge of emotional collapse. Affairs, depression, disconnection. And I've seen how the slow return to the body, through breath, through movement, through stillness, can be the first thread that pulls the rest of their life back together. Not because it's magic, but because it's honest. The body never lies. You may be successful, you may be respected, you may be intelligent, but if your body is neglected, a part of you is still unfinished, still waiting to be integrated. And no amount of titles, income, or compliments can replace that deep need to feel whole, inside your own skin. This is not a guilt trip, it's an invitation. Your physique is not a punishment for your past, it's the canvas for your next chapter. And that chapter doesn't have to be extreme. It can begin with 5 minutes, a stretch before you speak, a walk after dinner, a glass of water with intention, because every small act of care tells your nervous system, I am not abandoning myself today. And when that becomes your new rhythm, everything changes. You'll notice you breathe deeper during conflict. You don't shut down, you don't lash out, you become less afraid to be seen, you stand taller, not just physically, but emotionally. You begin to flirt again with life, with your partner, with your own joy. You rediscover the feeling of being desired, not because you asked for it, but because you became it. You're Ju magnetizing, and the core of that magnetism is not charm, it's consistency, it's ownership. Because a man who shows up for himself becomes irresistible not for how he looks, but for the signal his presence sends. And that signal, it speaks louder than words ever could. So ask yourself tonight, before you go to bed, what would it feel like to finally come back home to your body? There is a quiet tragedy in the way many men shrink themselves physically and emotionally, not because they lack strength, but because somewhere along the road they started believing that their body no longer deserved their attention. They tell themselves, I'm too busy, it's not a priority, I'll get to it later, but deep down there's something else. A kind of shame, a silent grief for the man they used to be, and the man they still long to become. When your body becomes a source of shame, you stop moving toward life, you start retreating from it. You wear baggy clothes, you avoid mirrors, you hide behind humor, success, or silence. You avoid intimacy not because you don't crave it, but because you don't want anyone to touch the parts of you that you've abandoned. And yet, those are the parts most worthy of touch. Let me tell you something you may not hear often enough. Your body is not broken. It is not too far gone. It doesn't need to be punished into submission. It needs to be remembered. It needs to be loved back into presence. Because here's the quiet truth about masculine energy. It doesn't shout, it occupies. A man who feels grounded in his body doesn't need to dominate a room. His presence speaks before he does. He walks slower, but with direction. He looks people in the eye, not to intimidate, but to connect. He listens with stillness, he touches with presence, he leads not by force, but by example. When you reconnect with your physique not as an ornament, but as an instrument, you start to feel this shift. The way you hug your children changes, the way you make love changes, the way you hold a boundary without aggression, or give a compliment without seeking one in return. Because you are no longer proving, you are simply being, and that's the paradox of the body. The stronger you become, the softer you can be. Because strength, when it's real, makes room for tenderness, for generosity, for grace. I've spoken with women who ache for their husbands to return, not from work or a trip or the garage, but to return to themselves. They say things like, "He's here, but he's not here." They miss the man who used to laugh from the belly, who used to hold them with intention, who used to move like he meant it. Not just physically, but emotionally, sexually, spiritually. You may not realize it, but your absence is felt. Even in silence, especially in silence, your partner can feel it when your body is numb, when you touch out of duty, not desire. When your hands are there, but your spirit is not. She can feel the hesitation, the disconnect, the places where you are no longer alive to yourself. And it creates a quiet grief inside her, too, because she doesn't just miss your presence, she misses your aliveness. But here's the gift: when you autopilot reconnect with your physique, you returns, belongs slowly, naturally. Like sunlight creeping in after a long winter, you start noticing again the smell of her perfume, the texture of her skin. The way she looks at you when she doesn't think you're watching. You become receptive not just to her, but to life. To the morning air, to the way your feet feel on the ground, to the satisfaction of moving with purpose. And when you move with purpose, you remember your power, not the power to control, but the power to be intentional. The power to be a safe space for your family, the power to be playful with your children without getting winded. The power to be fully present in your sensuality, instead of rushing through it like a task. Your physique gives you back the rhythm of life, the beat of your own drum, the courage to feel again, because disconnection doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small acts of neglect, but so does reconnection, one step, one breath, one gesture at a time. Maybe today it's 10 push-ups before your shower. Maybe tomorrow it's choosing real food over fast food. Maybe next week it's a walk after dinner instead of the couch. And maybe next month it's the moment you undress in front of the mirror and, for the first time in years, don't look away. Because that is the beginning of redemption. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to return to who you were before you forgot yourself. And if there's pain in that return, let it come, let it rise, let it teach you, because every ache, every stiffness, every breathless moment is not a sign of failure. It is your body saying, "I'm still here, I'm ready when you are." There comes a moment in every man's life where he begins to ask, "Is this all there is?" It doesn't come during the high points. It comes quietly, often in the middle of the day, in the middle of a routine. You're driving home, and suddenly the music feels empty. You're standing in the shower, and the water doesn't wake you up like it used to. You look at your reflection and feel like you're watching someone who has your face, but not your fire. And the world will tell you that this is normal, that this is what getting older looks like, that men fade into comfort, into fatigue, into utility. That the body is just a vehicle to carry your responsibilities, not a temple to your vitality. But I don't believe that, because I have seen men in their 50s, 60s, even 70s, who carry themselves with more fire than men half their age. And the difference is not genetic. It's not luck, it's devotion. They made a decision to stay alive inside their bodies. To not check out, to not give in to the quiet erosion of neglect. These men still move like they matter. They wake up with rituals. They stretch with intention. They eat not to feel full, but to feel fueled. And that changes everything. You see, aging doesn't have to be a slow fade. It can be a deepening, a ripening, a becoming, but only if you stay connected to the very place where your vitality begins your body, because your body is not the enemy of aging. It is the companion to your maturity, and when you nourish it, you become more magnetic, not less. There's something irresistibly attractive about a man who cares for himself not out of vanity, but out of dignity. His clothes don't make the statement his posture does. His muscles don't need to be loud, they carry the silent power of self-respect. His presence doesn't demand attention, It earns it. And do you know what happens when a man begins to carry that kind of presence? The world shifts around him. His relationships become less reactive and more secure. His business interactions become clearer. His leadership style transforms not because he knows more, but because he embodies more. Because here's what no one tells you: the people around you, your wife, your children, your employees, they don't just respond to what you say. They respond to what you are. They read your energy. They watch how you move. They notice how you breathe, how you sit, how you show up. And when your body speaks fatigue, disconnection, and emotional constipation, that is what your leadership communicates too. But when your body speaks clarity, grounding, and energy, you start to lead with a different kind of authority. You don't have to say, "Trust me." Your presence says it for you. "I want to talk to the part of you that has been waiting quietly, patiently, maybe even desperately, for you to return." The part that still remembers how good it feels to sweat with purpose, to walk with confidence, to wear a shirt that fits well not because you bought the right brand, but because you built the man inside it. That part of you never left. He just got buried under emails, late nights, fast food, and silence, but you can dig him out. You can meet him again, and you don't need to become a different person. You just need to start keeping promises to yourself again. Because every time you do a workout you said you would do, you heal trust. Every time you say no to what drains you and yes to what nourishes you, you build integrity. Every time you choose movement over mindless comfort, you become a little more of the man you were born to be. And your children notice, your wife notices, the people around you start to mirror your new rhythm. Not because you preached, but because you modeled. Not because you imposed, but because you inspired. This is how legacy is built, not just in finances or titles, but in frequency, in energy, in the embodied memory your presence leaves behind. So when your son watches you wake up early and stretch, when your daughter sees you care for your sleep, when your wife sees you undress with confidence instead of self, lo, they learn. Something without a word being spoken, they learn this is what it looks like when a man refuses to abandon himself. And that is a lesson more valuable than any piece of advice. So let this part of your journey not be a decline, but a redefinition. Your physique matters not because of the mirror, but because of the message. It tells the world who you are. But more importantly, it reminds you of who you've always been, and if you've forgotten, let this be the moment you remember. There's a loneliness that lives inside many men, a specific kind. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but from feeling unseen while surrounded by people. It's the kind of loneliness that seeps into your bones when the people around you don't seem to notice you're disappearing. Not because they don't love you, but because you stopped showing them the part of you that used to shine. And often the first place that vanishing begins is in your body. You stop running because your knees hurt. You stop dressing up because nothing fits right. You stop touching your partner because you're afraid she'll feel the softness where strength used to be. You stop initiating, leading, challenging because each time you try, you're reminded of how far you've drifted from the man you once were. And so, instead of trying again, you withdraw quietly. You make peace with resignation. You hide in productivity, in overworking, in distraction. But your body, your beautiful, forgiving, wise body still waits for you, still whispers, still holds the memory of who you were when you used to laugh fully, love openly, and move with conviction. What I've seen in the therapy room is this: men don't stop loving their families, they stop loving themselves. And from that place of self-abandonment, everything else begins to dim. They give and give and give, until they're empty. Until their smile feels hollow, until the mirror feels like a stranger. But do you know what's even more powerful than pain? A decision, a single quiet moment where you say, "I will not continue disappearing," because your physique is not just about health. It's a mirror of self-regard. It's a declaration. It's the difference between sleeping through life and waking up inside it. You don't need to become a warrior overnight. You just need to take one small, intentional step, one honest workout, one stretch, one real meal, one breath where you decide that this body, your body, is worthy of coming home to. And it's not about perfection, it's about presence. When you are present in your body, you make better choices. You listen more fully, you access wisdom that's buried underneath your anxiety, you become less reactive and more responsive. You speak with fewer words but greater impact, because your body, aligned and grounded, becomes your anchor. And what happens when a man becomes anchored? He stops being tossed around by every mood, every demand, every crisis. He becomes a calm force in the storm. His children feel safer around him. His partner leans into him without fear. He becomes a shelter, not just from the outside world, but from emotional chaos. Your physique becomes your temple, not just for strength, but for stillness, for grace, for knowing who you are, even when everything around you gets loud. And that kind of embodiment, it doesn't go unnoticed. Because people can feel when a man respects himself. They can feel it in the way you walk into a room, in the way you sit across the table, in the way you listen, in the way you say no without guilt and yes without hesitation. Self-respect is not a speech, it is a posture. It's in how you carry yourself when no one is watching. In the choices you make when the easy option would be to stay numb. It's in waking up tired and still showing up for yourself. In feeding your body not because you want to impress anyone, but because you want to be with yourself for the long haul. You have so many years ahead of you, years to run with your grandchildren, to travel, to laugh freely without catching your breath, to hold your lover without self-consciousness, but those years begin today, with how you treat the body that will carry you through all of them. So take a moment now, wherever you're sitting, to feel into your body. Close your eyes, breathe in. Is it tight? Is it numb? Is it tired? Whatever it is, meet it with tenderness, not judgment, because that's the first act of leadership. Meeting yourself where you are and loving yourself enough to move forward. You are not behind, you are not broken. You are simply in the middle of your becoming. You didn't choose the body you were born into, but you do choose how you live in it. Every single day you get to decide, will I inhabit myself fully, or will I drift through life as a visitor in my own skin? There's a kind of quiet dignity that returns when a man reclaims his body, not out of obsession, but out of reverence. You begin to walk differently, not because your legs are stronger, but because your spine remembers who you are. You move with grace, you speak with certainty, you stop asking for permission to exist, and most of all, you stop performing. You stop pretending to be okay when you're exhausted. You stop nodding when you want to cry. You stop checking out when life asks you to check in. Because when you start to love the body you're in, not in theory, but in practice, you stop abandoning yourself. You begin to treat your time as sacred, your health as sacred, your presence as sacred, and the world responds. You'll start noticing your partner look at you with new eyes, not because your biceps got bigger, but because your presence became warmer. You'll see your children reach for you, not just because you're there, but because they feel you. And in the quiet moments, when you're alone and the house is still, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time, peace inside your skin. There's a rhythm to that peace, a grounded knowing, a deep inhale that doesn't catch in your throat, a silence that feels full instead of empty, and it all begins when you make your body your ally again. So let's not talk about motivation, let's talk about intimacy with yourself, with your breath, with the quiet parts of you that have been whispering, I'm tired of being ignored. When you take care of your physique, you're not trying to become someone new. You're coming back to someone you left behind. And in that return you rebuild trust with yourself, with your body, and with the people who have been waiting to feel you again. You don't need a dramatic transformation. You don't need to punish your body into compliance. You just need to listen. To notice, to choose, to move even when it's hard, to rest when you're depleted, to stretch when life feels stiff, to feed yourself with something that honors your future, not numbs your present. This is the quiet revolution. The man who comes home to his body changes the atmosphere of every room he enters, not with noise, but with presence. Not with domination, but with calm, not with a mask, but with integrity, and you, dear listener, are more than capable of this return. In fact, I believe you've already started. The very act of watching this, of listening this far, means something inside you is ready. So take that walk, do those push-ups, pour that glass of water, sit in silence and feel your own heartbeat. Not to fix yourself, but to feel yourself, to remember that you were never meant to fade, you were meant to root, to rise, to radiate, because your physique is not just a shell, it's not just a reflection, it's a message. And the message is this: I am here, I am alive, I am home, welcome back. And if this conversation moved something in you, if it woke up a part of you that's been asleep, share it with someone. Let it be the spark in someone else's story. Leave a comment, tell me what shifted for you, what you're reclaiming, what you're still afraid to face. We are all in some way trying to come home to ourselves. And if this resonated, subscribe. Stay in the room. We'll keep having these conversations about the body, about relationships, about truth, about coming back, because you, my friend, are worth showing up for every single day.